The courtroom smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. I smoothed the silk blouse over my shoulders, pretending it wasn't shaking slightly from nerves. My hands felt clammy as I looked out the tall windows at the city below. 15 years of sacrifice had brought me here, yet my stomach twisted like I was about to fall off a cliff. A text buzzed on my phone, making me jump. "Mom." I said it. I told the judge. My daughter's words blinked on the screen like a warning light. My heart skipped. Was she angry? Scared? Proud? I couldn't tell. I exhaled slowly, fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup. The polished gold rim reflected my face, composed, successful, untouchable, but the truth beneath it was fragile, stitched together with quiet suffering and long nights I never spoke about. I'd built a life of accomplishment, but all that effort, all those small victories, could be undone in a single courtroom moment if my daughter faltered. And yet, I felt a swell of pride I hadn't allowed myself in years. She was brave, just like me. The doors opened, and my ex-husband walked in, flanked by his new wife. My stomach tightened. 15 years of sacrifices, hidden from them, all led to this moment. The moment my daughter was finally telling the truth, and nothing could ever feel the same again. 15 years ago, I was 22, living in a cramped apartment, my life barely settled after college. My parents had scoffed at my choices, my career, my independence, even my desire to be a mother on my own terms. "You're too young to do this alone, Sophia," my mother had said, her voice sharp, as if concern was a blade. "You'll regret it. Everyone else knows what's best for you." Her words cut deeper than she realized. I remember gripping the edge of the kitchen counter until my knuckles whitened, the sting of tears threatening to spill. My heart ached, not just for myself, but for the little life growing inside me, the one I had chosen to protect at all costs. My father shook his head in silent disapproval, refusing to meet my eyes. I felt invisible, like my existence was a mistake they couldn't tolerate. It was my grandmother, Nana Ruth, who saw me in the quiet corner of my despair. She held my hands in hers, rough from years of labor, and said, "Sophia, the world will never hand you what you deserve. You'll have to take it yourself. But promise me, no matter what they say, no matter how heavy it feels, you'll never let anyone else define your worth." Her words felt like a lifeline. I clutched the small gold locket she gave me, a reminder that even in solitude, I carried love and courage. That night, I sat alone on my threadbare couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the future. Fear gnawed at my resolve, but somewhere in the pit of my stomach, a stubborn flame flickered. By morning, I had made my choice. I would build a life for myself and my child, even if it meant walking alone, even if it meant facing judgment and scorn every step of the way. The world could dismiss me, but I refused to dismiss myself. And so began 15 years of invisible battles, silent sacrifices, countless sleepless nights, and the relentless pursuit of a future that had no guarantees, only possibilities. Starting over wasn't glamorous. My first apartment was barely bigger than a closet, with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that clanged all night. I worked 2 jobs at first, a small publishing assistant role by day and tutoring children by night, barely scraping together rent. Every dollar I earned felt like a tiny victory, but it was also a reminder that the world had not yet acknowledged my worth. Then came Mrs. Langston, a seasoned editor with a sharp eye and an even sharper wit. She saw something in me that I had buried beneath exhaustion and self-doubt. "Sophia," she said one rainy afternoon, "you have talent, and you're going to waste it sitting in the shadows. Learn to stand tall, even when everyone else doubts you." Her mentorship became my anchor. Nights turned into early mornings, manuscripts sprawled across my kitchen table, my daughter napping in the next room. I was exhausted, often questioning if I had what it took. I doubted myself more times than I could count, but the small wins kept coming. My first freelance article published, the first client who paid me what I was worth, the first whispered praise from someone outside my little circle. Yet I kept it all hidden. Social media told a carefully curated story: quiet lunches with friends, weekend walks, modest smiles. My parents didn't know I had grown a thriving career. They assumed I was barely managing, still struggling like they'd always predicted. Every success was mine alone, a private rebellion against the doubt they'd planted in me years ago. I bought my first condo with my own savings, its sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden warmth over the hardwood floors. The walls, still bare, held potential, a reflection of how far I'd come and how far I still wanted to go. My daughter, little Lily, watched me with wide, curious eyes, unaware of the battles I fought while juggling deadlines, clients, and her growing needs. Even when fatigue threatened to break me, I reminded myself of Nana Ruth's words: "Take what you deserve." I learned to negotiate, to assert myself, to survive and thrive in a world that underestimated me at every turn. I became a quiet force, relentless but invisible, building a life that was strong enough to shelter us both, elegant enough to intimidate those who had once dismissed me, and wise enough to prepare us for the day we could finally confront the past. 15 years of small victories culminated in a quiet, undeniable power. I had made it, not just for me, but for Lily. I had built a life where no one could diminish us, where our worth was ours alone to define. And soon, the moment would come when the world, and my family, would finally see what we had created in the shadows. The courtroom felt colder than I remembered, the polished floors reflecting the tension in my chest. My ex-husband, James, and his new wife, Vanessa, walked in with smug confidence, expecting to see the same young, struggling woman they had once dismissed. They didn't know that 15 years of relentless sacrifice had transformed me, not just surviving, but thriving. I had asked Lily to sit quietly by my side, her small hand in mine, a silent reassurance that whatever happened today, we were together. I took a deep breath and allowed them to glance around my office before I spoke. I had arranged for the meeting in a neutral space I'd chosen carefully, the modern loft I had purchased with my own earnings, sunlight spilling across walls adorned with commissioned art and shelves stacked with awards and publications. My desk, sleek and minimal, bore a small gold locket, the one Nana Ruth had given me all those years ago, a reminder of how far I'd come. They hesitated, their eyes scanning the room in disbelief. James's jaw tightened. Vanessa's smile faltered. They didn't recognize this place as belonging to the same Sophia they had judged, dismissed, and underestimated. I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm in it. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm but edged with the quiet power of someone who had endured and survived. "I see a lot of assumptions in this room," I said. "Assumptions about what I can and cannot do, what my daughter and I have endured. I've spent 15 years proving myself, quietly, while everyone else doubted me. And yes, I am exactly who I claimed I'd be. I built this life, every detail, every achievement, without a single handout from any of you." Their faces shifted from confusion to shock. James's lips parted, a colorless gasp betraying his disbelief. Vanessa's hand gripped her purse a little too tightly, her eyes darting nervously across the room. I continued. "This office, this loft, my career, it's mine. Every dollar, every client, every opportunity, earned, nurtured, and defended. And my daughter, Lily, knows the truth too. She knows the sacrifices, the perseverance, and the strength it took to get here." Lily, sitting quietly beside me, lifted her chin and whispered, almost shyly, but with undeniable conviction, "Mom built this, all by herself. And you need to understand that." The room fell silent again, this time with awe and a hint of shame. Their expectations of seeing a frail, struggling woman had crashed against the reality of someone strong, accomplished, and unshakable. They had been so sure they could dismiss me, but here I stood, living proof that time, effort, and resilience outweigh doubt and scorn. I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. 15 years of invisible victories had led to this, a confrontation not fueled by anger or revenge, but by undeniable truth. For once, the power dynamic had shifted entirely. The room was thick with tension, but I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. 15 years of sacrifice, of hiding my strength, had led to this moment. I had the upper hand, and I would no longer allow old patterns of disrespect or entitlement to rule my life. I looked at James first. His eyes flickered between guilt and disbelief. "If you want to be part of Lily's life, there are conditions," I said firmly. "First, you will respect her choices, her feelings, and her boundaries. No more dismissing her opinions or trying to rewrite the past. Second, I expect honesty. Lies, manipulation, or emotional games will not be tolerated. And finally, you need to reflect on your own life. Pursue growth, not control." He swallowed hard, nodding, though I could see the tightness in his jaw. It was unfamiliar to him to be told what was expected, rather than issuing demands. Then I turned to Vanessa, who had maintained her smug posture until now. "You need to understand that Lily's well-being is not negotiable. Your influence on her life will be measured by the care and respect you show her. Any attempt to undermine our bond or belittle the sacrifices made to raise her will end your involvement. You are welcome to participate, but only if your actions match your words." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I wasn't cruel. I was deliberate. Compassion didn't mean weakness. Firmness didn't mean hatred. I was setting the rules for a healthier, respectful future. Then I addressed the symbolic element of our past, the locket Nana Ruth had given me, which I now held in my hand. "This represents strength, resilience, and the choice to define your own worth," I said softly, meeting Lily's eyes. "We all need reminders of the person we can become when we refuse to be diminished by others. If you want to be part of this life, you must honor that." James and Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, they were confronted with the reality that their past judgments had no power over me anymore. My success, my independence, and my daughter's love were untouchable, not because I wanted revenge, but because I had finally learned to protect what mattered most. Lily squeezed my hand, and I felt a warmth spread through me. She understood that I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I had been fighting for her, for a future where neither of us would be diminished. 15 years of sacrifice had forged more than success. It had created boundaries, respect, and an unshakable sense of dignity. And now, finally, everyone in the room understood that if they wanted to be part of our lives, they would do so on our terms, guided by integrity, growth, and love. Weeks passed after the courtroom confrontation, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. James and Vanessa were learning, slowly, clumsily, that respect and honesty were not optional. James attended Lily's school recital without judgment, smiling proudly instead of dismissively. Vanessa, surprisingly, began showing genuine care, listening to Lily's stories without interrupting or redirecting them to her own narrative. I watched these changes quietly, cautious, but hopeful. I reminded myself that true transformation takes time, and that my role is no longer to fight for recognition but to set boundaries and observe growth. Each small gesture of sincerity felt like a victory, a reaffirmation that the lessons of the past were finally taking root in the present. Lily and I spent evenings together, reading Nana Ruth's old letters, sharing dreams and quiet laughter. I held the gold locket in my hand, its surface worn smooth from years of keeping it close, and I realized how it had symbolized more than guidance. It had been a promise to myself that no matter the hardships, I would endure, thrive, and protect my daughter. Looking back on the 15 years of sacrifice, I understood that every lonely night, every struggle, and every silent tear had been necessary. They had shaped me into the woman I had become, strong, independent, and unafraid to demand respect. The people who had once dismissed me were no longer the architects of my worth. I was. And yet, there was warmth in the triumph, a softness that allowed room for growth and forgiveness. I had fought not just for success, but for dignity, for love, and for the right to define my life. I had learned that power is not in retaliation but in self-respect and clarity. As I tucked Lily into bed one night, her small hand resting in mine, I whispered the words I had carried silently all these years. We built this together, and no one can ever take it from us. I closed the door behind her, standing for a moment in the quiet of our home. The city lights shimmered beyond the window, but they were no match for the glow of a life reclaimed, a daughter cherished, and a future earned. I turned to the locket once more, holding it close to my heart, and I knew, in the deep, steady rhythm of my chest, that strength and grace were not given. They were chosen. I am Sophia Bennett. I am enough. And I always have been.